210, Cormier Johnson, going to be taking place in the great city of Buffalo, New York. Get your wings now. Pay-per-view at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. What are you most excited about with this fight?
That's a good card. I mean, there's a few fights. Obviously, the main event, Cormier versus Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson is one of the scariest, most dangerous guys in the division. Knockout power. But Cormier, Cormier's seen it all. He's fought everybody. I mean, he fought at heavyweight, and he's been at light heavyweight pretty much since he's been in the UFC. So, obviously, a fun fight there. Chris Weidman versus Gegard Mousasi is an amazing fight. That's the co-main event. And there's a woman fight. Cynthia Cavillo is her name, and she's new to the UFC. Her last fight, she looked like a rock star. So I turned her around, brought her right back against another tough woman in Pearl Gonzalez. I'm really excited for that fight.
Dana, you told a great story the night of Conan O'Brien about you fighting Tito Ortiz. Can you tell me that story real quick? Like, what happened?
Well, obviously, we were a lot younger, and it was right after we bought the company. We were flying to Japan to go out there and look at an event, and we had just landed to refuel, and Tito and I were messing around, and Tito put me in what's called a neck crank, and I tapped, and when I tapped, he didn't stop. And it's a dangerous move. You can herniate discs. You can do a lot of damage to somebody's neck. So I just started punching him in the ribs as hard as I could. And he let go, and we both just jumped up swinging and started fighting. And the plane was actually taking off up into the air.
And it was real? Like, you guys were ticked?
Oh, no, we were fighting. Oh, yeah, it was real. And the Fertittas had to jump up and break the fight up, and yeah. How
many fighters have tried
you? The good old
you?
days of the UFC.
Has anybody else tried you? Has any other fighters tried you like that?
No, I've never been. Listen, the last thing I'm looking to do is get in a fight with any UFC fighters. That was a weird situation.
Yeah, it's probably not good business to mess with the boss either.
Yeah, no, it's not good business to fight with UFC fighters either.
Right.
It's definitely not good. It's not good for your future.
UFC 210, Cormier Johnson 2, taking place Saturday, April 8th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York. The event airing live on pay-per-view at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. It's been an amazing journey, Dana. I'm sure that you're obviously in the moment and focusing on the fights that are in front of you. But I was just thinking about the fact I interviewed you years ago when I used to work at the Score back in Toronto, and just how big UFC was in Ontario at the time. It was a big deal we could finally get those fights there. Have you? I'm sure you're not the reflective type, but have you looked at this journey the last 5-7 years you've been on and even been amazed at it yourself?
Yeah, I have my moments. The way that I look at it is I still see, where we're going. The sport's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, I obviously look back and think about where we were in the early days. And, people always ask me, did you ever really think that it would be this big? I know you're a promoter and you used to say this stuff back in the day, but yeah, I absolutely did believe it. I believed in this thing because I've always said this, and it's absolutely true. Doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what country you're from, doesn't matter what language you speak. We're all human beings, and fighting is in our DNA. We get it and we like it. It works everywhere.
Dana, I feel like you must get tired of getting asked the question of Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, the fight if it happens. So I'm not going to ask about that one specifically. But if it happened, do you think it would open up other opportunities for crossover fights, or would that be a one-and-done type deal?
Yeah, I don't get tired of it. It's an intriguing fight. It really is intriguing. If you break the thing down and listen, everybody has their opinions, and I'm not saying who's going to win or lose, but Floyd's 40 years old. Conor's 27. Floyd has trouble with southpaws. Conor's a southpaw. Conor has, knockout power on both hands, and Floyd does not. So it's an intriguing fight. And no, I don't like the idea of it opening up a bunch of different crossover fights. But now that this thing's been talked about so big, it's all everybody wants to talk about now. And my guy is saying they want to fight that guy, and other boxers saying they want to fight this guy. No, this is going to be a one and done.
As far as I know, it's a one and done, but just one more for you, Dana. As far as athletes who would be great at UFC and other sports, and I'm sure you hear this all the time. If you had an option, like imagine LeBron James in the octagon. Do you guys ever just
get Gronk?
Get Gronk. Is there a name that you think, you know what, he really would dominate if he was in our discipline?
No, it's true. Absolutely. I'm a huge Patriots fan, and they always ask me, which Patriots. I mean, Gronk is a no-brainer. If you look at a guy like Gronk or a guy like LeBron, if those guys trained in mixed martial arts when they were kids, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't see them transitioning into MMA now, but when they were kids, if this is what they would have focused on, yeah, they'd be studs.
How long would Brady last?
Well, Brady, that's the thing about Brady. Brady's so gritty and tough, and everybody's been talking about, backup quarterbacks for Brady all these years. Well, it finally got played out last year. I mean, the two guys, they had to go to the third string. Everybody was getting hurt, and they both got hurt. Brady goes in and plays all season long. He plays whether he's hurt or not. It's just, the guy's a stud.
How many NBA players would it take to take down an MMA fighter?
How many NBA players? I would say that the fighting has got better in the NBA. Back in the day, it used to look like slap fighting. NBA players were like the worst fighters in all of sports, but it's getting better.
They were king of the hold me back. They were king of that.
Exactly, yeah, that too.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Once again, as always, our friend Dana White. Cormier Johnson taking place Saturday, April 8th, KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York. Live pay-per-view at 10 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much for the time, man.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't know how much you've spoken to him or his camp or at all. He's been very quiet. He went on the MMA Hour this week. Was basically just saying that, describing how difficult the weight cut was and how difficult of a situation it was. I spoke to his manager, Ali Abdelaziz. He's not going to fight before Ramadan. We kind of had some hope, a little bit of glimmering hope. We probably knew that it probably wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to get a fight in before the summer, but we kind of hoped to see him added to that Dallas card. That's not going to happen. But says he's going to come back this fall. Says he'll never fight at 155 or at 170. Says he'll never move up to the 170-pound division. I've heard him say that before. I've heard Ali say that before. Ali told me that he's still looking for a title fight, of course. Why wouldn't he? Now, whether that's a title fight against Conor McGregor, probably not. Everyone knows what's going on with that. But an interim title fight, I think perfect case scenario, they would like to still fight for an interim championship. Your thoughts on all this?
It's crazy. I mean, it's really crazy to think how high Khabib Nurmagomedov's star was at the beginning of this year and how far it's going to drop by the time we finally see him fight again. And I do like the fact that he's basically owning up to it. I haven't heard him make any excuses and be like, well, my dietitian this, whatever. But no, it's on me. I'm having some health issues. I think he's being very upfront about it. And I like that. I like in any situation like that where a person just takes ownership of whatever happened and tries to fix it. It's unfortunate, man. I mean, you can't blame a guy for adhering to his religious beliefs and not wanting to fight around Ramadan. Praise the guy for that, but it's just timing-wise, it kind of sucks.
Oh,
right?
Timing-wise, it's awful.
It's bad. I mean, you're talking about the end of the year, and it's Tony Ferguson's got to move on. I mean, he can't sit around and wait for a Khabib Nurmagomedov to the end of the year. As you said, we know what Conor McGregor's doing. Probably won't see him fight this year in the UFC. So, but the division's got to move on. Tony Ferguson can't wait. So, what is on the table? Is there an interim title fight when he comes back? I don't know. I find it interesting they say never 170. I mean, if the title fight's probably not going to be on the line anyway, why not maybe have one fight at 170 just to test the waters a little bit? See, does your body? Do you feel better than you think you did?
No, but he's knocking on the door right there. I think if anything, if he didn't get a title fight, you almost do the 155 to prove again, hey, I can make the weight.
I see that.
I don't see him moving up to 170 in his next fight, and I actually don't even think it was necessarily be a good idea for him. And that is based around the reality of what weight cutting is in this sport. I think it would be a great idea for him to fight 170 just for his health, of course. But when you're looking at his career and if he can make that weight, I mean, he is the guy at 155. There's some heat behind people wanting to see him fight Conor someday. I think those may be pipe dreams. I don't know if we'll ever see that fight, but. I would love to see that situation where Khabib kind of corners Conor and says, I'm the interim champion. You have to fight me. I think there's a lot of people who really want to see that. And so I think he's going to come back into a good spot still. And I agree with you. It's crazy to think about. You look back at just New York and when he was talking to Dana White as he was annihilating Michael Johnson. And everyone's like, who is this? Who is this Russian guy? Man, get him in there with Conor McGregor. And now it's like, we're not going to see this guy fight until September of the following year. How brutal is that? I think let's do prediction time. He comes back and fights in September. What's the fight? How do you see it playing out?
I think you got to see, I think he still deserves, right? I mean, it's probably going to be an interim title. Okay, I mean, we're just assuming that Conor's not going to fight, right? We're assuming that the fight with Mayweather is going to happen, so he's not going to fight the UFC. So it's going to be an interim title fight. I think in the meantime, it sounds like Tony Ferguson's going to fight in the summertime, maybe International Fight Week. So I'm assuming they'll probably make that an interim title fight. So at that point, you got to see, is Tony Ferguson ready to defend his title? Now, he said, look, I'm not standing around waiting for this guy. Does Tony want to take another fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov? It certainly would help his stardom. It certainly would help his legitimacy as a champion, even though it's an interim belt, because Conor's sitting on the sidelines and he's literally fighting the number one guys available. So, if I had to say it, I'd say you run back Ferguson and Nurmagomedov in around September.
When Ferguson is the interim champion,
I think he's going to win
because he is just defeated. Because you're saying he fights in the summer.
I think he fights Edson Barboza this summer.
You think he fights Edson Barboza?
I do.
Well, that's out of left field.
I think they run that one back. What other fights do you have right now?
I mean, you could have the John.